Perfect. Hello, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to our webinar about visas. So my colleague here who's going to talk about visas is Casey from the U.S. Embassy in Prague. So hello, Casey. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And my name is Hani, and I'm the Education USA advisor. And I will talk briefly about Education USA, and then I'll leave the floor to Casey, and he will walk us through the visa process and application and all of your questions that you have. So first of all, Education USA is here for you guys if your dream is to study in the United States. The advising center works free of charge for you. So if you have questions, please get in touch with me and I'm happy to take you step by step from choosing the right college for you and then through the application process and then going all the way to visa process and the pre-departure orientation. So this live stream today is mostly for those of you guys who are in your graduating in your senior year. I know you guys send in your applications, and some of you, those early birds, already know if you are accepted or not, already have your I-20, so this is perfect. Some of you are still waiting, which is fine. You will get your admission decision, and then once you get your I-20, because you're applying for a US institution, either it's college or university, we will talk about F1 visas. We'll also mention some insider information for those of you who are looking for some work and travel, so J1 visas, and maybe some more as well, because if your dream is to go to the United States, you will need visas for sure. Various types, but you will need them. So if we can move forward in the presentation, Education USA is here to answer your questions. I actually work remotely from Brno, which is going to be visible on the next slide. So if you have any questions, you can definitely send me an email or just get in touch with me via Instagram. You can send me a DM and I'm happy to connect with you. If you are from Plzeň, Ústí, Olomouc, Ostrava, or Praha, we do have American centers there, so you can definitely schedule an appointment. Again, it's free, and my colleagues are also happy to assist you with your questions or your parents or anyone, you know. So please get in touch. This is my email address. You can also send me a message through WhatsApp. So, you know, I'm happy to work with you and to make your dream come true. And what we do in the advising center, it's going to be on the next slide. And I offer consultation. So if you are from Brno, I'm happy to meet with you in person and answer any of your questions. I also have a library. So if you are preparing for your SATs, if you are preparing for your TOEFL, I do have books that I can lend to you and you just, you know, you can study with them. And then we have these live streams about various topics. So today it's going to be about visas. I'm planning one on the 5 steps to your American dream. So for everyone who is in the junior year and is still deciding, that's the one you should attend. We're going to have an SAT workshop. So if you're planning to take an SATs, you know, this is all happening in our network. We will have an in-person event in June where you can meet with other people who are currently in the United States or will become US students. So definitely mark your calendars. Everything you can find on our social media. So we are on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube. The handle is Education USA Czech. And now over to you, Casey.
Well, thank you very much, Ani. And it's a pleasure to be a guest of Education USA and to join you for the live stream today. So thank you again for the invitation and for having me.
Thank
To
you.
our guests, I have a few slides prepared today to talk about F, M, and J visas. But before we do, I just wanted to start our conversation with remembering why you want to study in the USA. So whether it's about the friends you'll make along the way, the incredible, spectacular nature, the strength of our institutions, the quality of our colleges and universities, personal growth, or who you'll be when it's all over. Don't lose sight of why you want to study in the USA, and welcoming students to study in our institutions is one of the primary goals that we have of these visa letters in this program. So it's my pleasure to be here with you, and let's dive in.
Awesome.
So there's three visa classifications we're going to talk about today. I'll try not to bury you too far in the jargon and the letters and the numbers, but I have them up on the screen right now. You have F visas, so these are for academic programs or language. You have M visas, these are for vocational programs, training to learn a specific skill, like being a pilot. And then J visas. And there's a number of different subcategories of J visas. We're going to talk primarily about summer work and travel for
Mhm.
university students. But there also are visas to work as an au pair, visas to work in a research exchange when you become a graduate student. And those are in the J family as well. And so what you're going to learn today about the J family also applies to those other types of J visas, even though we're going to talk about summer work and travel.
Mhm.
So remember the documents that you're going to need to apply. You need a current passport that's got enough validity to cover your entire stay. We also recommend that it has an additional 6 months beyond that. You're going to need a compliant American passport photo. The dimensions are a little bit different than the European ones. You're going to need the confirmation for your DS-160, which is like our application form for your visa. And then, depending on the type of visa you're applying for, you're going to need additional information. So, if you're applying for an F or an M visa for an academic program, you'll have an I-20 form. You see a small version of it there. That'll be created by your institution after you've been accepted, and it will bear the signature of your school certifying official. And if you're doing a J visa instead, the form is a DS 2019. It will also have the signature of your sponsor for your short-term program or exchange in the US. The last thing that you're going to need is you're going to need your SEVIS fee receipt. SEVIS is a program that we use to keep track of all of the different applications for student visas and exchanges. You need to pay that fee and bring proof that you've paid the fee to your visa interview along with all the documents here. Sometimes we suggest people bring additional documents. You can always refer to our embassy website, but these are the five that you're certainly going to need. If you want to bring more things, that's okay. Keep in mind the visa officer may not ask you to review all of your paperwork. Don't take that as an insult. We're just very busy. We don't want to waste any of your time. So, how do you apply for the J1 visa? And it's very similar flow chart for the F visa, but I wanted to put these pieces together. You get your DS 2019, you pay your SEVIS fee, you complete your application online, you schedule at the end of the completion of that application through US Travel Docs. Then you come for your visa interview, you receive your visa, then you book travel, and then, of course, you enjoy your time in the United States. We always recommend that people apply early. If there's only one lesson you take away from this jam today, it's that you need to apply for your visa as soon as you can. That way, if there's any additional processing or it takes us a while to get to you, you'll have your visa plenty in advance of your travel to the US. So we have made some changes. I know some of you have been kind of following, maybe applying for a US visa for a while. So I did want to update you on a couple of changes that we've made in the past couple of years. You can apply now up to 1 year in advance of your program dates. What that means is that you can apply a year before you would leave to go to the US. So if you were going to do a fall start at a US university, you could actually apply in the winter of the year before, as soon as you know you're accepted. And I can sense there's some anxiety out there about being accepted. Some of you are waiting right now. That's okay. But just know that you can apply as soon as you can get that I-20 form or that DS 2019 if you're applying for an exchange. Some of you may have had US visas before. Maybe you've done a J exchange before for a year of high school in the US. We meet a lot of students from the Czech Republic that are doing that. This could be a chance for you to take advantage of the interview waiver program. If you've had a visa that has expired in the last 48 months, you might be able to apply for this program and save yourself a trip to the embassy. And so the details for that program are on our website. You can apply by visa waiver if you've had that visa before, and we may be able to help you without having to make the trip to Prague. So this could be especially interesting to those of you in Ostrava, Liberec, Brno, who are, make long train trips to the embassy. If you've had a visa before, you should consider that as an option. And finally, we do accept digitally signed and transmitted DS 2019s and I-20 forms. That means from your American school. So you don't have to wait for snail mail to bring you your DS 2019 or your I-20 from the US. But you still want to print and bring a physical copy with you, or of course, to mail the physical copy with you if you're applying by interview waiver. So let's talk about a little bit of anxiety, right, that certain folks might have when they come in for interview. Some things you might want to consider, before your interview is how did you select your program? Why that school? Why are you doing it now? What speaks to you about it? How do you pay for the program? Are your parents giving you support? Do you have a tennis scholarship, hockey scholarship? And then what are your plans for the future? What do you want to do after you complete your program? And that's mainly for F visas, but we may ask similar questions about your J visas for summer work and travel. Um, there are a lot of different criteria we look at when we adjudicate visa cases, but there's two refusals that I wanted to mention. One of them is 221G, which means we need additional information or processing for your visa. And one of them is 214B, which is insufficient ties. The truth of the matter is that many F and J applicants from the Czech Republic are approved, and so you don't need to be paranoid or worried about these refusals. But if that happens at the window, the officer will explain the grounds of it. We have a handout that we would give to you and sort of identify what the next steps would be. So I don't want you to walk into our office thinking we're not going to be able to explain to you, what happened. We do give you some information if it doesn't work out. And finally, what additional documents that I referred to earlier, whether they're transcripts from your program, whether they're scholarship letters, a description of your research, anything that can help us understand what you're proposing to do in the United States, we would suggest that you bring those. They're not required, but we would suggest that you bring those in case we would ask you about that during the interview. So I know that some of you sent some questions in advance about working in the US or traveling around the US after an FM or J visa. So with our F visas, these are student visas to complete an entire academic program in the US. When the visa period is over, you can apply from our immigration service for approval to work in the United States for up to 12 months on optional practical training or OPT. So you would apply for that when you're in the US. That means that you'd be taking a job after graduation in the US in your field to help you continue to hone or develop your skills. And so that's a very common way that F visa holders can work for up to 1 year in the US when they complete the program. For graduates of STEM programs, so science, technology, engineering, math, they can be extended up to an additional 24 months, but you'd have to apply again with CIS. And your school official at your college or university may have information on this, or you can go to the CIS website. It is important to remember that when you're in the US on an F visa, let's say you're doing a bachelor's degree at a US college or university, you do not have permission to work as a regular employee in the US. You have permission to work up to 20 hours per week at the university in which you're studying. So this OPT extension is a chance for you to use your skills that you learned in your program outside of the college or university for the time of length that's indicated there. So it's a little bit different, especially for some of our colleagues from Europe that have reciprocity agreements between different European states that are in the European Union or Schengen zone, but you do not have work authorization outside of your university. The other way that individuals may work in the US after they've completed a program or exchange there is through an H-1B or other petition-based visa. These require a US company to sponsor you for skilled labor. So what they're saying is, hey, we've recognized that you have a really specific skill that we need to make our company better, and they've applied on your behalf to the US government to get you permission to work in the United States in the future. So if that's something you're interested in doing with your skills, that's a play that you might market yourself to be eligible for that type of petition, but it's really outside of the F visa process, which is supposed to be designed to help you complete a study program in the US. So I wanted to create some time for questions and answers. There's a little bit of information I wanted to talk about visiting the US sort of before or after coming in on one of these student visas. According to our current regulations for summer work and travel, that's a J visa where you're in the US temporarily to work and travel for the summer. You are permitted to enter the US 30 days before your program dates start for your job and stay up to 30 days after. So if I'm going to work at a hotel in New York for June and July, I could come in 30 days before and leave 30 days after my summer work and travel period. For F visas, for academic programs, you can come into the US 30 days ahead of the start of your program. Let's say it starts on September 1st, your university program. You come in 30 days in advance, and then you have to depart up to 60 days after the end of your program. So if it ends on, May 31st, then you would have to leave right there in the middle of the summer, about 60 days later. So that's a question that we get a lot, which is how restrictive are the dates are on the form. And then the other question that was sent to me in advance was about summer work and travel before or after studying in the US. So you have an F visa, you're studying at, let's say, the University of Chicago, and you want to do summer work and travel in New Jersey working at a golf course. Those are actually two separate visas. So you would have one visa for your study, and then you would have another visa for your summer work. Because remember, your F visa doesn't have an authorization to work outside of your university. So those are some questions that I was sent in advance. And Hani, I'm going to kick it back over to you in case our participants have added any more questions for our live stream today.
That's perfect. And you guys, I encourage you to write more, but so far we have, and I'm gonna follow up on the summer work and travel before and after studying in the US. So when I am on F1 visa studying in the United States, do I have to fly back to the Czech Republic for a J1 interview and then I can start my summer work and travel?
So what I said earlier about the interview waiver program might
Mhm,
apply to you if you already have a current valid visa. But the
mhm,
challenge for you will be if you come back to the Czech Republic, let's say for the holidays, you'll have imminent plans to go back into the United States. So that might be a good time, let's say, during a holiday break or a spring break, if you're back in the Czech Republic, to
mhm.
apply for your J visa here at the embassy. Yeah.
Okay, okay, perfect. Thank you. And there is another question about a passport. So, this person asks, what happens if I get my student visa for 4 years into a passport that has an expiration date in 2 years? What do I do?
That's a great question. We actually hear this question a lot.
Mhm,
So the official answer on that is that you would travel with both the expired passport with the valid visa and
mhm,
your new travel document, assuming that your biographical information is the same. So if you've gotten married or changed your name, you're going to need a new visa.
mhm,
But if the biographical information in the two passports are identical, you could
mhm,
bring the old passport that's expired with the unexpired visa in it. We also get a fair number of Czech applicants that are uncomfortable with that process and choose to apply and renew their visa so they have a current visa in their current passport. But it is recommended and allowed that you could travel with the valid visa in the expired passport as long as you have
mhm.
a currently valid passport with the same biographical information.
Perfect. And there is also a question if my passport photo was submitted during that visa process online and it was accepted, do I have to bring a printed photo to the interview as well?
That's a great question, and we do run into some problems with photos in student visas. So let's just start from the beginning.
Mhm,
Our website has the requirements for the passport photos. The American ones, they're a little bit bigger than the European ones.
mhm,
Also, a big difference between the United States and the Czech Republic is we don't allow you to wear glasses in your
okay.
photo. So we do get a
Mhm,
lot of photos with glasses, and those aren't going to work for us. So you're going to need to take a
mhm,
photo without glasses. We also need a photo that's within the last 6 months. And so
mhm,
every once in a while, we get a visa renewal application, and it's the same photo as the visa that we issued in 2002, or I'm sorry, 2022.
mhm,
Obviously, that's not going to work, right? Because it's not
mhm,
from the last 6 months. It was the same photo you gave us before.
mhm,
We have a photo booth that we make available here at the embassy where you can take photos downstairs. It's about 200 crowns, cash only, or
mhm,
you can, stop at another place around Prague or wherever you're traveling from to get a
mhm.
compliant U.S. passport photo. But yeah, just because you've managed to upload a photo into the software system does not excuse you from bringing a compliant photo to the interview. And the last
Mhm.
thing we want to do is have to turn you away because you don't have a photo. And now you're scrambling around Prague. Inevitably, it will be raining, right? Looking for a passport photo. So just do yourself a favor and upload what you think is good, but then bring us a compliant photo. And if you don't need it, then you can use it for something else.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I also have a question. What language is the interview in at the
So
embassy?
That's a fantastic question. We interview in a number of languages, but the requirements for F, M, and J visas are that you would speak English because the
Mhm,
programs are offered in English.
mhm,
So we will probably interview you in English, at least enough to verify your English skills, but I don't really see any reason why not to speak English to you if you're going to go to the US and study in English. Um, for our B visas, our tourist visas, we interview in a number of languages.
mhm,
But for these visas, we expect you to speak English because it'll be needed for your program.
Perfect. You also talked about an interview waiver. So does it apply also for people who have ESTA visas and are applying for F1 visas later? Can they apply for the waiver?
That's a great question. So ESTA is an electronic travel authorization. It is
Mhm,
not a US visa. So
mhm,
when I say a visa, I mean that you actually had you came, you interviewed for a visa, we've collected your fingerprints, it was
mhm.
printed and put into your passport. So ESTA for this purposes is not a US visa. So if you've never had a US visa, we will see you in Prague for your visa interview.
Great. There is also a question about that optional practical training, and apparently this person is currently at a community college, and he is asking if he can apply for OPT after getting his associate's degree, therefore after 2 years.
Yeah, that's a great question for CIS. So remember that you're
Hmm.
applying from a different government agency for that authorization to work, the
Hmm.
Customs and Immigration Service, and it's
Hmm.
really up to them on whether they grant you a work authorization. In an earlier career, I actually taught at a U.S. community college, and so if I were in USCIS's shoes, I would be interested in what your program is, and are you at a skill level in which this practical training is really important. So you are working on an associate's degree in business, that may or may not rise to the level of needing a work authorization to develop those skills. But if you have a associate's degree in electronic instrumentation, that might be considered closer to the sort of terminal training in that
Hmm.
subfield. And so OPT might make more sense there. So I don't want to speak on USCIS's behalf. I think it'd really be up to them on whether you'd be eligible for OPT.
Okay, great. There's still we are going back to the interview at the US Embassy. Apparently, many people are planning to go.
Come on down.
Uh, do I have to go by myself or can I come with my parents?
That's a great question. So typically we expect adults to come by themselves.
Mhm,
Now, if you're under the age of 18 and you want to be accompanied by a family member, you should write us in advance. We do
mhm.
typically expect only the visa applicants themselves to come to the interview if they're above the age of 14.
Okay, my question would be, and if you can just briefly summarize what people can and cannot bring to the interview. Like,
Yeah, the easiest way to understand that is it's kind of like going through airport security, except we ask you, you'll be checking in all of your electronic devices. So this is really important for applicants that might have details that they want to share at the interview that they store on their phone, like, oh, I have a copy of that document on my phone, or I keep that on my phone. You're not going to have your phone, right? So you're going to want to print out physical copies of documents that you want to present or show at the interview. And then
Mhm,
when you come to our facility, you'll go through this security screening. You'll check in those electronic devices if you bring them, and then you'll come upstairs and join us. When you get to the top of the stairs, you'll take a number from an
mhm,
electronic kiosk. And then when we're ready to serve you, we'll call you by the number. You'll come to the first window. You'll identify yourself. You'll give us your passport, any of the supporting documents for your visa. Then we'll call you up again to take your fingerprints. Then you'll wait a little bit. We'll call you up again for the visa interview. We'll give you our decision, and then we'll send you on our way. One other thing that's important from planning your visit to the embassy is that we will keep your passport for a few days so that we can finish processing your visa and deposit your visa in the passport.
mhm.
Some of you who have been here already know this because when you make your appointment, you have to indicate how you're going to get your passport back from the courier service. So we're going to keep your passport for a few days. Then the courier service is going to give you back your passport, and you'll get it from them. Their pickup location is a new location in Prague 1. We're not sending folks out to Prague 19 anymore, and they'll notify you when it's available. Unfortunately, if your visa is refused, if you're not going to be issued a visa, we'll give you back your passport right on the spot.
Okay, perfect. There's also a question because we talked about the grace periods. So people have to leave within the 60 days after their semester finishes. So what do they have to do when they want to return next year? Like they were granted 4-year visas for study in the United States. So do they have to renew it, or what do they have to do when they come from another semester?
Yeah, because academic calendars have different dates and universities offer classes in kind of an irregular schedule.
Mhm,
It's really important that you're in touch with your school official, in terms of knowing when your classes will be, and then abiding by this rule of 30 days before, 60 days after. So,
mhm,
let's say it's May, you're not taking any summer classes, right?
mhm,
You've got 60 days after and 30 days before. 90 days may cover your entire summer, right? So you may not need to leave the United States depending on the way your schedule
mhm.
works. But your school certifying official and your international student office will be able to give you the most up-to-date advice that pertains for their academic schedule, because that's really driven by when the classes are. If you're taking summer classes that are part of your program, the 30 and 60 should cover the whole overlap, and you'd be eligible to stay in the US the whole time.
Perfect. That's awesome. I have a question about what if I am denied my visa? Can I apply again?
It's a great question. And this is an area where the circumstances of the actual denial would be important. The two that I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to go back into this
Mhm,
slide here, the 221G, it's technically a refusal, but what it's saying is we need more information or more time to process your application. So you'll get an update at some point on what happened with your case.
mhm,
While you're waiting for that processing, I know it can be tough on people's nerves, but the best thing to do is to just wait for us to finish doing the work that we need to do. Or if we've asked you to send us more information, get us that information. We're checking it every day. Every day, we're waiting, for the folks who are supposed to send us documents to send us those documents so we can finish processing those visas.
mhm,
One of the common 221G problems that we'll have is that SEVIS receipt. I had mentioned the paying of the SEVIS fee. You
mhm,
have to make sure that you pay that, and you should have your receipt with you when you come for your interview. Not
mhm,
having that, we can't issue your visa until you pay the fee. So
mhm, mhm,
that's a really good example, and probably the most common 221G issue we run into with the Fs and the Js.
mhm,
Um, for the 214B refusal, what we're basically saying is you don't have sufficient ties to travel to the United States. And so that's not a permanent ineligibility. You could apply for a visa again, but we don't recommend that you do that until something's changed about the situation, because
mhm,
whatever it was that the officer found, for you to have insufficient ties, unless you've really changed something about your living situation, job, career, program you're going for, something, you're probably going to get a very similar result unless the situation has changed. There are other refusals. There's not nearly enough time to go into every particular category.
mhm,
So make sure that if you are refused a visa, you understand what refusal it is,
mhm.
and follow the steps that are there.
Perfect. I think that is it. I don't see any more live questions, but you guys, please, if you have any, you can still type it in the chat box and I'll get back to them in a week or so. And I'm happy to answer anything. But Casey, thank you so much for walking us through. You guys, if you have questions, specific questions about your visa application, you can get in touch with me and I'm happy to jump on a call with you and I'm happy to walk you through the application or what service, and how to pay for it and so forth. I'm definitely happy to do that with you. So thank you so much. On the last slide, I hope that there are my information and there are Casey's or there is US Embassy Prague visas information. That's much more important. So please read through it. I did, and it's very informative. And they do have information about J visas and F visas. They have information. What do you need to bring to the interview, to the embassy? So just go there, read it, and if you have questions, reach out to me, and I'm happy to help. Thank you so much for staying here with us. Oh, it's amazing, the live viewers here. The recording will be on YouTube. Casey, thank you so much for the information shared.
Thank you again, and thank you, Education USA. Have a wonderful spring, and we'll see you in the US.
See you. Bye.